إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Yesterday we covered the prayer of the traveler, right? And we covered the fear prayer. We did that before that, right? Okay, now we are going to cover Salatul Jum'ah, the prayer of Jum'ah, Salatul Jum'ah. Okay? Salatul Jum'ah is obligatory upon every single person in the community except for the female, the slave, the traveler, and he who has an excuse. He who has an excuse means like sick or he cannot physically make it to the masjid, like that. So Salatul Jum'ah is obligatory for the entire community. Salatul Jum'ah is obligatory for the entire community except for the female. Obviously Jum'ah is not obligatory for them to attend. They can pray Zuhr in their houses. Okay? Except for the female and the slave, because the slave does not have to, the slave has different rulings in Islam, and the traveler, and the one who has an excuse, meaning he is sick or something. Now when we say the traveler, right? What we mean by the traveler is, we defined the traveler yesterday, but over here, if the person hears the call for Jum'ah, the scholars say it becomes obligatory for him to attend. If he hears the adhan for Jum'ah, then he must come and attend Jum'ah with the masjid. Okay? The slave, yeah. A slave. The one who is owned by another human being. Okay? Obviously slavery doesn't exist anymore, right? But there was a time when it did exist, and Muslims had rules pertaining to how to treat or deal with slaves. Okay, so for our purpose, it can be ignored in our times. You know, it can be ignored in our times. Okay. Okay. Now, what is the procedure of Salatul Jum'ah? Everyone knows the procedure of Salatul Jum'ah, that the Imam stands up to give two khutbahs. It is sunnah to give two khutbahs. The Imam stands up to give two khutbahs, and he sits down in between these two khutbahs. And the scholars say that he should mention some verse or some ayah or praise Allah in both of the khutbahs. In other words, both of the khutbahs should be of an Islamic nature. Okay? That he should mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, praise, send the salam upon the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Likewise, he should face the people while giving the khutbah. And after he finishes the two khutbahs, he comes down, and it is sunnah that the Imam himself leads the prayer. Okay? Even if there is a person that is more knowledgeable than him in the Quran, it is sunnah that the Imam himself leads the prayer, unless the only condition which the scholars have said that it's, better that he doesn't lead the prayer is when his tajweed is so bad or his recitation is so bad that he's going to make major mistakes. In that case, he gives it to another person. Otherwise, the custom or culture that we have over here in Houston and many places, that the khatib will give the prayer to someone else, this is not the sunnah. It is sunnah that the person who gives the khutbah, he leads the prayers if he has the proper recitation of the Quran. Jum'ah prayer, everyone knows, is 2 rak'ahs, and the recitation is out loud. It is sunnah to make the recitation out loud. So far so clear. I don't think we have to go into too much detail. It's very simple. However, what if someone, first of all, is it obligatory to attend the khutbah? According to the correct opinion, yes, it is obligatory to attend the khutbah, and if a person does not attend the khutbah without a valid excuse, then he will be sinful. In other words, it is obligatory for the believer, for the male Muslim who is of age, to try to attend the khutbah. And if he does not attend the khutbah and he does not have a valid excuse, then he will be sinful. The proof for this is the verse in the Quran itself. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِذَا نُودِيَ لِلصَّلَاةِ مِنْ يَوْمِ الْجُمْعَةِ فَاسْعَوْا إِلَى ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَذَرُوا الْبَيْعَ. O you who believe, when the call for prayer is given on Jum'ah, then rush to the remembrance of Allah, meaning the khutbah. Rush to the remembrance of Allah and leave transactions, leave trade. So when the call for Jum'ah is given, all the Muslims should leave their worldly affairs, they should leave their jobs, they should leave their offices, and they should come to the Jum'ah khutbah, which obviously will be followed by the Jum'ah salah. Okay? If a person misses the khutbah, however, and he catches the 2 rak'ahs, then his Jum'ah is still acceptable. Also, he will be sinful if he didn't have an excuse for missing the khutbah. His Jum'ah will be acceptable. Suppose he misses the first rak'ah of Jum'ah and he catches the second rak'ah of Jum'ah. What should he do then? He completes the rak'ah for Jum'ah. Okay, he completes it for Jum'ah. Suppose he misses the second rak'ah. He catches before the taslim. What should he do now? Do you understand the scenarios, or is anyone confused? Okay, I'm giving you a number of scenarios that he's coming in late. Firstly, he catches the khutbah on time, and this is what all the Muslims should do. Secondly, he misses the khutbah, but he catches the 2 rak'ahs in full. Obviously, we say his Jum'ah is valid and he has done the Jum'ah. Thirdly, suppose he misses the first rak'ah. He catches, when the Imam stands up again and says, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman, he catches from there. He catches the second rak'ah. We say then that he makes it 1 rak'ah and he still has his Jum'ah. Okay? Thirdly, suppose he catches the Imam when he's standing up for Sami Allahu Liman Hamida, after the second rak'ah. Or he's gone down to sajda for the second rak'ah. In other words, he's missed the ruku' of the second rak'ah. In this case, we say that he has missed his Jum'ah, and after the Imam finishes, he should pray 4 rak'ahs of Dhuhr, not of Jum'ah. He has to pray 4 rak'ahs of Dhuhr, not of Jum'ah. Because the Prophet said, whoever catches a rak'ah of Jum'ah, then he has caught the Jum'ah. So if he catches less than a rak'ah of Jum'ah, then he did not catch Jum'ah, he caught Dhuhr. Okay? So you understand the scenario, is that suppose you entered and the Imam was standing up from the second sajda. So you obviously pray with the Imam, you start your prayer with the Imam, but when the Imam finishes, you don't just say 2 rak'ahs of Jum'ah, you have to say 4 rak'ahs of Dhuhr. Okay, this is one point. Secondly, another point, suppose you enter and the Imam is giving a khutbah, should you still read your Tahiyyat al-Masjid or not? The correct opinion is yes, you should, because when a man came and sat down and the Prophet was giving a khutbah, he asked him, did you read your Tahiyyat al-Masjid? And he said no. So the Prophet says, stand up and pray and make it short. So if you enter and the Imam is giving a khutbah, then you should read 2 rak'ahs and make them short. Read 2 short surahs in those rak'ahs. Likewise, it is part of wisdom and a part of our sharia that we should have to try to have as less number of Jum'ahs as possible in the community. Why? Because we want people to come together. We should have as few number of Jum'ahs, maybe the fewest that we need. We shouldn't try to have Jum'ah in every street corner basically. Try to make it as less as possible, only in the major masajid. And we don't really have to deal with this problem in Houston because the masjids are so far apart. But in Muslim countries where masjids are so close together, right? The government basically, in Saudi Arabia, the government decides in this community, this one masjid, the biggest masjid, will be Jum'ah. And all the rest of the people have to come to that masjid. What is the point of Jum'ah? The people come together. Okay? The people come together. So we try to have Jum'ahs in as few places as possible. So we don't want to have 1 Jum'ah in this masjid and 1 Jum'ah in the masjid across the road, for example. No. That's not allowed. Okay? You should have as few Jum'ahs as possible. Suppose a person misses the Jum'ah prayer, absolutely. What does he pray at home? He prays Dhuhr at home. Because Jum'ah you need to have people for it. You can't give yourself a khutbah and then stand up and lead the prayer for yourself for Jum'ah. You need to have people for it. No, Jum'ah does not have a second Jum'ah. The Jum'ah you have to have the whole thing, Jum'ah. If you arrive late after Jum'ah, don't have another khutbah, just pray your Dhuhr. Okay? Just pray your Dhuhr and move on with it. Okay? A person who attends Jum'ah, it is strongly encouraged for him to take a bath. Take a bath. And in fact, some ulama say it is obligatory for him to take a bath. Because the Prophet ﷺ said that غُسْلُ يَوْمِ الْجُمْعَةِ wajib, that the taking a shower on the day of Jum'ah is obligatory upon every Muslim. But in another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever takes a shower, it is good. Whoever does wudu, it is good. And whoever takes a shower, it is better. So he's showing then that if you just do wudu, it is fine. Your prayer is still valid and acceptable, and you're not sinful for leaving the shower, but it is strongly encouraged to take a shower before coming to Jum'ah. Likewise, it is encouraged to wear good clothes, because the Prophet would have special clothes for Jum'ah that he would wear for Jum'ah. Okay? Another point. Yes. Nicest clothes. Nice clothes that look good to people. Okay? Also, it is prohibited to speak while the Imam is giving the khutbah. It is prohibited to speak while the Imam is giving the khutbah. The Prophet ﷺ said that if you tell your brother to be quiet during the khutbah, then you are the one that has wasted his khutbah too. So not only has the person wasted the khutbah that's talking, but even if you tell him to be quiet, even if you tell him don't talk during the khutbah, then you have wasted your prayer. Okay? You're allowed to make a gesture that doesn't qualify as talking. If you just make like this, that's fine. But you're not allowed to say anything you can do during the khutbah. And this is something that, especially the sisters are guilty of, and this is true almost everywhere, that the masjids, during the Jumu'ah time, you find the sisters are talking amongst themselves. And they don't realize that if they do this, then there's no point in them attending the Jumu'ah. They don't get the rewards of Jumu'ah then. Because the Prophet said if someone talks, vain talks during the khutbah, then he will have no reward except what he talked. In other words, he won't have the reward of the Jumu'ah prayer. Okay? So the brothers and the sisters, they should be careful. They don't speak or they don't talk during the Jumu'ah khutbah. Okay? It is very important that they remain quiet during the Jumu'ah khutbah and listen attentively. Obviously, they should listen attentively to the Jumu'ah khutbah. Likewise, they shouldn't they shouldn't become ghafil. The scholars said the person listening to the khutbah should not let his mind wander astray, because shaitan obviously will try to make your mind wander astray during the khutbah. Rather, he should pay attention to what the imam is saying. He should be affected by what the imam says, and this is one of the signs of the believer, is that he is affected when Allah and His Messenger are mentioned to him. So he shouldn't just come and think of his job or career or whatever. He should also have khushu' during the khutbah. In the sense, he should have a type of humbleness. He should listen to what the imam is saying. He should pay attention to it, and he should try to make it affect his heart. Okay. That was briefly Salatul Jum'ah. Very simple chapter, not much ikhtilaf there. And the last chapter in Kitab al-Salah before we move on to funerals is what salah is left. No, before we move on to funerals, what is left? Eid, exactly. We did nothing yesterday, you missed that. Salatul Eid. Okay. Salatul Eid. Salatul Eid is a fard upon every single Muslim, male or female, whether the female is menstruating or not. She must come to the Eid prayer. Okay? Because the Prophet ﷺ explicitly told the women that take every single old and young women to the Eid prayer. So some of the Sahabiyah said, Ya Rasulullah, what if we don't have our jilbab or our outer garment to wear? So the Prophet said, then she should share with another jilbab of her sister. So someone that might have another jilbab, or she has a great cloak or garment, she should share with that other sister and still come. And even the Prophet said that even those that are menstruating, he said that they should come, but they should stay away from the actual prayer. Obviously, they shouldn't pray, but they should come and attend the congregation, in the sense that they should listen to the khutbah and be with the Muslims on that day. So it is obligatory for every single Muslim to attend the Eid prayer according to the correct opinion of the scholars. Oh, by the way, what is the timing of Jumu'ah before we move on? Obviously, it's understood. The timing for Jumu'ah is not 1:45. That's a good one. Put that with the 399. The timing for Jumu'ah is obviously Dhuhr prayer. Okay? And some scholars, they allowed it slightly before Dhuhr, slightly before Zawal, but we should try to be safer and pray at the timing of Dhuhr. Now, what is the timing of Eid prayer? That's real good, in the morning. Specifically when? Salat al-Duha, exactly. The timing for Eid is the timing for Salat al-Duha. The timing for Eid is the timing for Salat al-Duha. What is the timing for Salat al-Duha? Who remembers? Do you remember, Yasir, Salat al-Duha? What was the timing for it? We did this 2 days ago, I think. Okay, the ending time is before Dhuhr, but what is the beginning time? Yes. The sun is 1 spear's length above the horizon. So the timing for Eid starts at the timing of Dhuha. Okay? The timing of Eid starts at the timing of Dhuha. It is sunnah to pray Eid prayers outside of the community. It is sunnah to do so, because the Prophet ﷺ, he would leave Medina. It was his sunnah, when he would pray Eid, he wouldn't pray in the Prophet's masjid. He would pray in another masjid outside the city of Medina, not in the masjid actually, in an open field or a gathering. So if we can do this sunnah, it's good. If not, then obviously we have logistical problems in Houston and other places in non-Muslim countries that we can't always do what we want. But if we have authority, and if we have the capability and the means to do Eid on an open field outside of the city or outside of the community, this is following the sunnah, inshallah. Let's finish this up, inshallah, so we can go on. Okay. Likewise, it is sunnah. Obviously, there are two Eids, Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr. It is sunnah to pray Eid al-Adha at its earliest time. And it is sunnah to slightly delay the Eid al-Fitr. Why is this? Does someone know? What do you have to do on Eid al-Fitr? First of all, when is Eid al-Fitr? People are confused. When is Eid al-Fitr? Calm down, Hafiz. When is Eid al-Fitr? End of Ramadan, exactly. What do you have to do on this day or before this day? Yes. Well, not just that. Yes, you have to eat, alhamdulillah, after Ramadan. What do you have to do though, besides that? You have to give a certain type of zakah, a certain type of charity, which is called zakat al-fitr, which we'll do inshallah next week. Okay? Basically, every single Muslim has to give a zakah, a type of zakah, before Eid prayer. So because of the fact that he has to give it before Eid prayer, the Prophet ﷺ encouraged us to delay the Eid al-Fitr, because everyone should give this zakah before the Eid prayer. However, this does not apply to Eid al-Adha, or the Eid which is the Eid of Hajj. Okay, so therefore we should make the Eid al-Adha as early as possible. Okay. Yarhamkumullah. Likewise, it is encouraged for the person who is going to Eid to dress in his good clothes and obviously take a shower and put on some perfume for the men. As for the women, then unfortunately what has occurred is that Eid has become, as everyone knows, a fashion show for the women, and this is something that Allah and His Messenger are extremely displeased with, that they have converted a religious act and a religious, into a festival, basically. They have converted an act that should make them come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have converted this into where they show their beauty to others and they dress in matters that are not allowed for them to dress. And the sisters should fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they should advise and exhort their other sisters that this is not the time or the place. In fact, there is no time or place to do this, but especially on Eid Day. Because Eid Day is meant as a day of thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Both our Eids in Islam are related to religious acts. The first one is after Ramadan. After you have done a whole month of fasting, of dedication, you're going to ruin all your deeds by doing this on Eid. Astaghfirullah. Likewise, the second Eid is the Eid of Hajj. Okay. Once again, when all the Muslims have gathered together in Arafat, right? The next on the 9th of what month? Dhul Hijjah. Right, the 9th of Dhul Hijjah. This is another Eid for us. This is another Eid for us that all of the Muslims are worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, we too should join them in this act of worship in a certain way, and that is by offering this Eid prayer. So both of our Eids are related to our religion, and they should not be changed into worldly events or acts that, astaghfirullah, have haram in them, which unfortunately is the case in our Eids over here. Okay. The person that is going for the Eid prayer, he should take a path that is different from his return path. This is sunnah, it's not obligatory. We're talking about the sunnah of Eid, that it is sunnah that the Prophet would take a certain path to Eid and he would return by a different path. And the scholars say that of the benefits of this is that the Prophet would meet more people. That if you go, obviously in those days they used to walk to the masjid and walk back, or walk to the place and walk back. If you walk through different paths, you're going to meet different people on each path. Okay, so this is of the sunnahs of Eid, that you're meeting different people by walking down these paths. Okay. Likewise, it is sunnah that he says the takbirat. How does he say the takbirat? What is the procedure of the takbirat? Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Wallahu Akbar, Walillahi alhamd. This is the sunnah. Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Wallahu Akbar, Walillahi alhamd. Now, there's some additions that people put onto this, right? Who knows these additions? Alhamdulillahi kathira wa subhanallahi bukratan wa asila. All of these things are not part of the sunnah. Okay, they are not a part of the sunnah. We should avoid them. The sunnah is Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Wallahu Akbar, Walillahi alhamd. Likewise, it is sunnah that the people say this individually and not as one loud congregation. Because the Sahaba, they were saying individually. So it is sunnah, it is preferred, it is encouraged that everyone says it individually in his own way, because it is a worship that you are doing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by saying this takbir. So you don't do it all together. Each one should say his own takbir. Let's try to keep questions to the end, inshallah. Okay, each one should so each one should try to say his own takbir and not say it together as a community. This is the sunnah. On the day of Fitr, on the Eid al-Fitr, it is sunnah for him to eat something before he goes up to the Eid prayer. Why is this? To show that he is not fasting. He has just fasted 29 or 30 days, so to show that this day he is not fasting, it is sunnah for him to eat something, preferably an odd number of dates if he can. This was the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, if it is the Duha, the Eid al-Adha, then he should sacrifice his, his udhiyah after Eid, not before it. Everyone knows this, right? You sacrifice the udhiyah, you sacrifice your goat or your sheep for the next 2 or 3 days after Eid, not before the prayer. Okay? So the Eid al-Fitr, you do an act before it, and that is, you give zakat al-Fitr. The Eid al-Adha, you do an act after it, or it is encouraged to do an act after it, and that is, sacrifice a goat, or a camel, or whatever, or a sheep, or whatever. Okay? So each of these 2 days has another religious act to them, too. The way that Eid is offered is that it is 2 rak'ahs long. It is 2 rak'ahs long. The first rak'ah, you start with 7 takbirat. You say Allahu Akbar and you raise your hands, which is sunnah, 7 times. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, 7 times. Okay? 7 times. And the second rak'ah, you say Allahu Akbar 5 times. And this is explicitly been narrated in hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that the Prophet ﷺ would say in Abu Dawud, the Prophet ﷺ in his takbirat for Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr, in the first rak'ah he would say 7 takbirat, and in the second rak'ah he would say 5 takbirat. Okay, so the correct opinion is that you should say 7 and then you should say 5 takbirat after that. Likewise, the Eid prayer does not have an adhan or an iqamah. The Eid prayer does not have an adhan or iqamah. What is the proof for this? There is no proof that there is an adhan or iqama, which shows you that there is no adhan or iqama. Okay, so to have an adhan or iqama for Eid prayer is actually an innovation, and we should avoid having any adhan or iqama. Eid prayer does not have any sunnahs to it, so you don't pray any sunnahs before or after Eid prayer. There are no sunnahs to the Eid prayer. Okay. If it's in a masjid, then you have to pray 2 rak'ahs before sitting down. That's Tahiyat al-Masjid, but that's not sunnah for Eid. Okay. After the 2 rak'ahs, it is sunnah for the imam to give a khutbah. It is sunnah for the imam to give a khutbah in which he encourages them. Basically, he talks about the community affairs and encourages them to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this goes back to the wisdom of the khatib, or the person giving the khutbah, that he should take this time and utilize this time to the best of his advantage, because rarely do so many Muslims get together. Rarely do so many Muslims get together as they do on Eid or on Jumu'ah. With that, we finish the Kitab al-Salah. We finish Kitab al-Salah. One last point in Eid, by the way, is that for the Eid al-Adha, for the next number of prayers, basically from the Eid al-Adha, after Dhuhr and Asr and Maghrib and Isha for 3 days, he is going to say the takbirat out loud. Okay, after the Eid al-Adha. So the 10th and the 11th, and then stopping at the 12th of Maghrib. He's going to say the takbirat, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Wallahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Walillahi alhamd. He's going to say this out loud after every fard prayer. Okay, this is sunnah for Eid al-Adha and not for Eid al-Fitr. But with that, we finish Kitab al-Salah, and we move on to a new book called Kitab al-Janaiz. And I'd like to remind you again and again, we're going at a very fast pace, and I don't like this personally because I would like to discuss in more detail with more evidences, but due to time constraints, next week is basically our last week. The week after that is a half a week, and we might have to change the Fiqh class to Kitab al-Tawheed also. So that's why next week we have to finish Zakah and Siyam. Okay? And if there are enough brothers interested, I might open up a class in my house concerning Nikah and Talaq, marriage and divorce. Okay? And also I'm going to do it in my house, inheritance. Okay, after we finish this 1 month long course here in the masjid. Okay, so we move on now to the next chapter, which is a very short chapter called funeral prayers. Okay, the ulama, after they talk about salah, they move on to funeral prayers, and they talk about the dead person, how you wash the dead person, and then how you offer the funeral prayers. Okay, so basically there are 2 aspects to the funeral prayer. Firstly, taking care of the dead person, washing him, burying him, everything. Secondly, the actual funeral prayer. Okay, the first aspect we're not going to go into detail for a number of reasons, primarily because you either have to go into a lot of detail and tell you exactly what to do, so it will be a practical benefit, and actually show you the best way to actually, we should go and see how a dead body is washed and is shrouded, because it's not something you can convey by words. It's very difficult to explain in words. Or just to tell you briefly, roughly what to do. This is what we want to do in this lesson, just to give you a rough idea of what to do. But before we get there, obviously, it's strongly encouraged to visit the sick. It is strongly encouraged to visit the sick. Everyone knows of the great blessings of visiting the sick. The Prophet said if a person visits a sick person, then the angels will continue to ask his forgiveness until he returns. And so many ahadith that talk about the blessings of visiting a sick person and making dua for him. If we are present when a person is dying on his deathbed, then we should encourage him to say La ilaha illallah. We should tell him, oh so-and-so, say La ilaha illallah, because we want his last statement to be La ilaha illallah. And this shows you the importance of Tawheed, the importance of La ilaha illallah. We want his last statement to be La ilaha illallah. So we should encourage him, we should remind him, say La ilaha illallah, say La ilaha illallah as much as possible. Okay? And there are some weak narrations in which some ulama say you should recite Surah Yasin over them, but these narrations are not authentic. They are weak narrations. Okay? If the person, or when a person dies and we are present at his death, right, then the first thing that we should do is cover his eyes, close his eyes up. Okay? The Prophet ﷺ said that when a person's soul is taken out of his body, then his eyes follow his soul. So when you see a dead person, then close his eyes. Okay? So this is why every dead person you find him looking up. Every dead person you find his eyes, they are looking up. Because when the soul is taken out of the body, his eyes are going to follow his own soul, and then life is taken away from his body. Okay? So the Prophet said, when you see this, then اغمضوا عينيه, close his eyes. Okay? So first thing we should do is close his eyes. Okay? Obviously, after this, the community obligation becomes washing the body and burying it. Okay? So it is fard kifaya. We already discussed what fard kifaya means. What is fard kifaya? Do you remember? It's a fard on the community. It's fard on the community as a whole to take charge of washing him and burying him and taking care of his funeral prayers. Okay? So it is Fard Kifaya for the community to take charge of the affairs of the dead person. And the first obligation that you have after this is to wash the dead body. Okay? So how do you wash the dead body? Briefly, very quickly. Basically, his clothes are taken off, but he is covered. So you never see his private parts, or her private parts. And women take charge of washing the bodies of the women, and men take charge of washing the bodies of the men, except the scholars say that it is permissible, but not encouraged for the man to wash his wife, and the wife to wash her husband. But it is still better for women to take charge of women, and men to take charge of men. And it is best for the closest relative to take charge also. Okay? And this is, by the way, very psychological in the sense that this person was your relative, either your father or your brother or your son or whatever, and here you are washing his dead body. Okay, look at death now. You're literally looking at death in the face. This was the very person you ate with, and you grew up with, or whatever relationship you had with him. The very person you laughed and joked and talked with. Now you are burying him and sending him to the future. So this should be a reminder to you also that a time will come when you too will return to your Lord and return to your Creator. So the scholars say it is encouraged that the closest male relative, or if it's a female, the female relative, take charge of washing the body of the dead person. What is done is that firstly a cloth is placed on the dead body, so that his private parts are covered, and then his clothes are taken off underneath this cloth, so that never ever do you actually see the private parts or the awrah of the dead body. And this is something by ijma', you are not allowed to see the private parts of the dead person. Okay? So you cover the dead person and you take off his clothes. After this, you wear a cloth, or you wear a type of, basically you can say gloves in our times, I mean it will do the job. Basically you're not supposed to touch his awrah with your hands. So you have to wear something, and then wash his whole body. Give him ghusl, give him wudu, and wash his private parts too. But since you're not allowed to touch his private parts, you have to wear something on top of it. Okay? So the scholars say, for example, a glove would do in our time. You have a rubber glove or some type of glove, so that you don't actually touch his private parts. And then what you should do, the first thing that you should do is make sure that there is no najasa left in his body. So you rub his stomach downwards to expel any urine or stool. So you rub his stomach downwards, like this, okay? You push your hand down and you rub it. And like I said, either we demonstrate it or we just go over it briefly. So we'll go over it briefly. We can't really go into great detail in this. Basically, you expel all of the najasa, okay? And then you wash it with your hand that is covered with a cloth. You're not allowed to touch his private parts. So you have to wash that najasa from his body. You have to wash that najasa from his body. After you wash the najasa, you give him a complete wudu and a complete ghusl. And as many times as necessary, 1 or 3 or 5 or 7, an odd number of times. And that water that you use should be mixed with some type of scent, with some type of kafur or some type of scent that makes the body smell good. It is sunnah to mix that water with some type of scent. So you wash his whole body, or her whole body, whoever you're washing, and give it a whole wudu before that. As many times. There's no specified limit. You see yourself when you have done the job. When you think that his body is now clean and pure, then it is sufficient. But it should be an odd number of times, either 1 or 3 or 5 or 7, as many odd times as needed. The scholars also say that you should put some cotton in his private parts, because you don't want any more najasa to come out. Once you have given him the ghusl, you don't want more najasa to come out. So they say that you should put some cotton or something in his private parts that will prevent anything from coming out. Okay. Also, after you have washed his body, then you should put some pleeb or some perfume on his body, and also on the shroud that you are going to use. Also on the shroud that you are going to use on his body. And the scholars say that if he has long nails or long mustache or whatever, then you should trim it, because it was sunnah for him to do so when he's alive. Now that he is dead, then you should take that responsibility. Okay? That if he has long nails, or he hadn't trimmed his mustache, or his underarm hair, obviously as for the pubic hair, you won't even see it. You shouldn't even see it. Okay? So you don't know about it. But like the underarm hair, basically the same fitra things that we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago, we now do them for the dead person. Okay? And this once again shows you, or it should remind you, all of us, of death. That these aspects that we will be so shy or embarrassed to talk about or do, someone is going to have to do it for us when we die. Okay? Someone is going to have to wash us, our private parts, after we urinate or when we are dead. And this shows you how frail man is, and this should remind us over and over again of the akhirah, and that a day will come when we will be so helpless we can't even wash our own selves, forget about doing good deeds or evil deeds. So we should take advantage of our times when we are alive, when Allah has blessed us with life. We should do as many good deeds as possible. The woman, the scholars say that her hair should be tied in a braid, in a knot, so that it doesn't, come all loose or free. It should be tied in a knot, okay, so that it doesn't disturb or come everywhere. Now, as for the kafan, as for the wrappings, then the scholars said that the sunnah for the man is that they use 3 white sheets of cloth, clean sheets of cloth. And white is sunnah because the Prophet said that white is the color that Allah loves the most. So, dress yourselves in white and dress your dead in white also. This doesn't mean, you don't think that white is superior to black in the sense that white men are better than black men. The Prophet clearly said there is no superiority of a white man over a black man. But he's talking about the color that you wear on your clothes. Because why is this? Because white shows you that, black, if you're wearing something black, right, and something najas or something dirty falls on it, you won't know about it. Whereas if you're wearing something white and something dirty falls on it, then you'll clean it immediately. So basically you'll be more conscious of yourself. You'll be more conscious of your appearance and your, if you're clean or not. So the Prophet said that white is the color that is most beloved to Allah. So dress yourselves in white and dress your dead in white also. Clothe your dead in white also. Okay? So it is sunnah then to have 3 white sheets of cloth, and they are wrapped in a special style or manner that if you go and see, they have a certain way of wrapping it. But if you just tie it around, wrap the dead person around, that's fine too. But at no point in time will you see the man's awrah. Remember this always. At no point in time will the man see the man's awrah, the woman see the woman's awrah. It will always be covered up. So you cover a man in 3 white folding sheets. Okay. As for the woman, then the sunnah is that she is covered in 5 pieces of cloth. She is covered in 5 pieces of cloth. Okay. Firstly, an izar, which is a lower garment. Okay. Secondly, a dara', which is an upper garment. Okay. Thirdly, something which would resemble a thobe, which would cover her from her chest all the way down to the her toes. And then 2 sheets of cloth are put around her. So the scholars say that for the woman, to make her even more protected, there are 5 cloths that the scholars say that she should have 5 cloths on her. But this is sunnah. The bare minimum is what? 1. Just you have to cover. No, the bare minimum is 1. It is sunnah for the man to have 3 and the woman to have these 5 different cloths, but the bare minimum is 1. Okay. After this, after the ghusl has been given and after the kafan has been done, then the salatul janazah is done for that person. And the best person to do salatul janazah is his closest relative, his son or his father or whatever. And if he doesn't want to, he can give it to the imam. But we're saying the best person should be the one that was close to him in this life. Why? Obviously he's going to love him more. He's going to want to have a more sincere dua for him. Okay? So the scholars said that the best person that should take charge of leading the prayer is his closest male relative. Okay, or her closest male relative. But obviously, don't make a fuss. If there's another person, the imam or something that you want to give it to, that's fine. That's fine. But they say that to remind you and so that your dua is more sincere, it should be the one that is closest to the person that died. How is the salatul janazah performed? The salatul janazah consists of 4 takbirat. This is the sunnah. Other narrations mention more than 4, but 4 is what is mostly narrated in the sunnah. And this is what the sunnah of our times is to this time. There are 4 takbirat. Each time the imam raises his hands and the people behind him raise their hands and say Allahu Akbar. Okay? And there is no ruku' and no sujood. After the 4 takbirat, you say salam to one side only. Okay? So there's 4 takbirat. After the 4 takbirat, you say salam to one side. And if you want to say to the second side, that's fine. But the one side is the minimum. There are no ruku' and no sujood. Nothing. It's just 4 simple takbirat. After the first takbirah, you recite Surah Fatiha. After the first takbirah, you recite Surah Fatiha. After the second takbirah, you recite the salat upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim ila akhir dua, to the end of dua. After the third takbirah, this is where you make the dua for the dead man or the dead woman. Okay, and the du'as that are mentioned in the sunnah, and I encourage all of you to buy that book again, Fortification of the Muslim, or I think the new translation is called Citadel of the Believer or something. It's available in Dar es-Salam, one of the translations, and a better translation is available elsewhere. The green one is a better translation actually. But both are fine, both translations are fine. I encourage all of you to get this book and memorize the dua for the funeral prayer. The Prophet ﷺ would make a special dua for the funeral prayer. But the point is, even if you don't know this dua, say any dua. The Prophet ﷺ said, when you seek forgiveness for the dead, then ask sincerely for them. Ask sincerely for them. And remember, just like you are praying for this person, one day someone will pray over you. So just like you want him to pray over you just as sincerely as you're praying over this dead person. So inshallah, it is a sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as you do, so too you shall be treated. Right? This is a sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That if you are nice to your parents, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless you with children that are nice to you. And if you are evil or bad to your parents, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless you with, or curse you, if give you a punishment with children that are not nice to you. So just like you wish to be prayed for while you are dead, so too you should pray for that man while you are standing in front of him. Okay? Pray sincerely for him. Pray that Allah saves him from the punishment of the grave. Pray that Allah blesses him with Jannah. Pray that Allah blesses him with a wide grave, and that he doesn't make his grave a place of torture for him. Okay? Pray sincerely that he forgives his sins, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses him with more good deeds and magnifies his good deeds. And basically, even if you don't know this dua that is the sunnah, make any dua. And if you don't know Arabic, make it in any language. The point is you have to make a dua for this man, and make it sincerely for this man. After the fourth rak'ah, or after the fourth takbir, immediately after the fourth takbir, the Imam says salam. So if you want to make a dua after the fourth takbir, that's allowed, and if you want to remain quiet, that's allowed. Shaykh Uthaymeen says both are fine. If you want to make another dua quickly, that's fine, and if you want to remain quiet until the Imam says his salam, that is fine too. Okay? After the finishing of the prayer, then the body should be carried to the graveyard, and in our times it has to be driven because it's too far away. It should be carried to the grave. The grave should be dug deep enough that the scholars say like deeper than a man's height, like 5 foot or 6 foot deep. It should be rather deep. It shouldn't be very, because we don't want a little wind or a little rain to come and expose the body. We want it to be rather deep. Okay? So the grave should be dug all the way, like 5-6 feet deep. I mean, there's no specific number mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah, but we're talking about from a simple common sense perspective. If we just covered the man with dust, wind would blow it away. Or if we put him 2 or 3 feet below, then if a sandstorm or some rain came, then it would expose him. We don't want that. We want it to be very deep, so that it's not exposed in this fashion. Now there are 2 ways that have been narrated for burying the dead person, and one of them is the preferred way. And this is called the lahd. L-A-H-D, lahd. Lam, ha, dal. The lahd method. This is preferred. Okay? This is preferred over the other method. What is the difference between the lahd method and the shaq method? The other method is called shaq, sheen and qaf. What is the difference? Yes. Okay, look. If you dig a hole, suppose it's a deep hole, horizontal view now of the hole inside the ground. Okay? If you were now to put the person right at the bottom of this hole, just put him right at the bottom of this hole, his body, just lower it into the hole, and then cover it with some planks of wood or some type of, covering. Okay? This is called the shaq method. Okay? It's called the shaq method. However, if you were to dig this hole and then dig a side channel so that it becomes like an L. Here we go. It becomes like an L. Basically, you dig another side channel and you put the person in this L shape. This is the lahd and this is the sunnah. This is the lahd and this is the sunnah, and this is the way that the Prophet ﷺ himself is buried. This is the way that the Prophet ﷺ himself is buried. Is that there is a straight, you go straight down and then you dig an L shape towards the Qibla. You dig an L shape. Okay? And then you place the man so that you would turn his face to the right, and then his face should be facing the Qibla. Okay? How do you place the body inside this lahad? Firstly, obviously the L shape. So for example, in this masjid, right, we're going to dig a hole like this, and then go a little bit like that. Suppose we're digging next to the masjid, obviously not inside the masjid, it's haram. Suppose there's a graveyard next to the masjid, we will be digging straight down like this, and then it will be a chamber a few feet big that would go towards the Qibla. Okay? And then we will put the person in, and we would turn his face towards the Qibla. So his body, his face will be facing the Qibla, his right hand will be facing the Qibla, and obviously he's lying on his back. Okay? After we have done this, after we have placed him in the lahd, then we cover that L shape up with rocks and stones. Do you understand this? It's an L shape now. It's an empty L shape. We have covered the body, we have put the body inside this L shape. Now we take bricks and we cover up the L shape so it becomes like a I shape again, a simple shape. Okay? We cover it up. This is the sunnah way. This is the preferred way to do it. And if in our times the shaq is practiced, it's not haram, it's not a bid'ah. It is allowed, but it is not as encouraged as the lahd method is. Once we have done that, then obviously we cover up the grave with sand and dust, and we leave a mound on top of it, so that it can be recognized that this thing is a grave. And some scholars even said it's alright to put a stone or a brick, yarhamkumullah, as long as it's not surrounding the grave, as long as you don't build a structure. You just put one brick at the tip or at the head of the grave to know that this is a grave. Okay? Wait. The rewards for offering the funeral prayer and attending the janazah are extremely great. The Prophet ﷺ said that he who attends the janazah prayer and he who then walks with it to the grave and waits until the body is buried will have 2 mountains of rewards, 2 qirats. Okay? 2 qirats is 4. Qiratain. Okay? 2 qirats, if you like, of rewards. So when he was asked, what is a qirat? He said like the mountain of Uhud, a huge mountain. The mountain of Uhud is a huge mountain outside Medina. Okay, he will have that many rewards. And if a person only attends the Janaazah, he will have one of those mountains of rewards. So it is strongly encouraged when we hear of a person who has died. It is strongly encouraged for us. It is Fard Kifaya for the community, for our community, and it is strongly encouraged for each and every one of us to make an effort to attend his funeral prayer and to make an effort to go with him to the grave and bury him and attend his funeral too. Because also another benefit is that it reminds us of our death over and over again. When we see a person in this state, it reminds us that we too, a day will come when we too will have to face this, and when we too will be buried just like this person is being buried. Okay, so it is strongly encouraged for us to bury the dead person. Another, or to accompany the dead person. Another point is that the dead person should be buried as soon as possible. As soon as possible, because the Prophet ﷺ said that, hurry up or quicken in the burial of your dead. Okay? Hurry up or quicken in the burial of your dead. So we should hurry up. We shouldn't delay like the Christians. If the guy died on Monday, they might wait till Saturday so that it's a weekend so people can come to his funeral. No. The Muslim is buried as soon as possible. Okay? Maybe the next day. As soon as possible. It just takes a few hours for the body to be washed, and the grave to be prepared might take half a day. So as soon as it is possible for the person to be buried, he should be buried. We should not delay in the burial of any Muslim. Okay? Likewise, it is strongly discouraged to move the body to another place. So if he died in that city, he should be buried in that city. He should not be transported back to his country or something. Why is this? Because it delays his burial. Okay? If you're going to transfer the body back to the Middle East or Pakistan or something, it's going to take another 2-3 days. Okay? So this is strongly discouraged. Strongly discouraged. The ulama say the only time where you would say it is allowed is when there is a fear that people might mutilate his body. So for example, if he's living in a, not just in a Kafir country, but a country which is openly hostile to the Muslims, that if a Muslim were to die, they would literally, dig up the body and desecrate his grave or something, right? In this case, we have to stop today, huh? Okay, in this case, the scholars say it's permissible for the people to transfer his body and move it to another place. Okay, this is the only reason. Apart from this, though, it is not allowed, or it should not be allowed to remove the grave to another place. Likewise, it is haram to dig up a grave. It is haram to dig up a grave unless, once again, there is a strong factor or reason to do so. Okay, so for example, the same reason might apply, is that the kuffar might mutilate or desecrate these bodies. Then it is, in this case, it is allowed to dig up these bodies and bury them in a separate place. Otherwise, it is haram to move a Muslim from another place to another place. Okay, we'll finish it. Okay, we'll finish up the chapter of graves, and we'll say that when a person dies, obviously it is the sunnah to bear patiently at his death. Not to cry openly or wail or to beat yourself. This is all haram and of the acts of jahiliyyah. But natural crying is allowed. To cry naturally and to feel sorrow is allowed. This is halal. This is a sign of mercy. But to go more than this, to beat yourself or to wail or to invoke curses upon yourself or your family, or even worse than this is all haram and of the acts of jahiliyyah. When a person dies, it is sunnah that we console his relatives. If he's not of our relatives, we console his relatives. And there are certain du'as that are of the sunnah that you say if you meet that person. Likewise, it is encouraged for the men to visit the graves, and there's a certain dua that is sunnah for them to say. And we said that it is haram for the women to visit the graves. It is not allowed for the women to visit the graves. It is not, also one last point, it is not allowed to accompany the grave when you're taking the body. It is not allowed to accompany it with fire or with candles or with any type of horns. Basically simple. Leave it simple. Okay? Don't accompany any strange objects. All of this is of the innovations, and they have been explicitly prohibited by the Prophet ﷺ, specifically fire or wood or any type of holy religious icon. No, leave it simple. Okay? Just his funeral bier, the procession should come and be buried. Okay? No accompaniments, nothing grand or lavish. The funeral should be simple. The Prophet ﷺ forbade wasting or being extravagant. So the funeral prayer and the funeral cloth and the funeral arrangement should be simple. The most simple as needed. With that, we're pressed for time because the Shaykh has his lecture. So inshallah, we finish Kitab al-Janazah. Next lesson, inshallah, we'll start Zakah. And inshallah, we'll finish Zakah and fasting next week, inshallah.